Welcome back to the podcast. Today, you're going to get to meet my friend, Alyssa McGinn, and hear her story of the entrepreneur's journey, deciding what business am I really in. Alyssa, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks for having me. My name is Alyssa McGinn. I currently reside in Wichita, Kansas, and I actually am a second generation in a family business that's taken an entrepreneurial turn. And we serve clients through data analytics services. And so we help companies bring all their data together, not just financial, not just operational, bring it all together to tell a holistic story of their business so they can make better informed decisions. And we actually point those services to the M&A space. So businesses that are preparing to sell or have been recently acquired is kind of our jam. And so I have a husband and 2 little boys, and it's loving life.
And one thing that some of our listeners might enjoy knowing too is that you are in the business with your mom.
Yep.
And so this is a real family effort. So for those that have considered that or who are also in that situation, that informs the way you make decisions and all the things you've had to navigate with those relationships.
Yeah. My mom started the business almost 20 years ago now, and I never thought I would actually be a part of it. But somewhere along the way, I really believe entrepreneurship is a condition, and I've known I've always had it, but I just didn't know how to express it or what that would look like. And when my mom wanted to grow the company and she didn't really know how, she didn't have the right resources, not that I really did either, but I was like, I want to help you. I want to do this. I had this desire to grow something. And so we partnered up, and our relationship and our business has taken a lot of different forms because I just started working for her, and now we work together, and now we have multiple businesses together. And so it's been quite the journey, and we hope to continue to expand that to include more members of our family and make it more of a family business. So it's been really fun.
I love that. I love that you're modeling that and kind of leading the way for many of us on how that can look. So there's so many ways we could take this discussion. We're talking about some of the benefits of being in the Good Humans Growth Network, and that's what this series has been about. We could talk about one of the many grow groups you lead. There are peer advisory and referral groups inside the network that have all different names. People have told stories about the benefits of being in your group in Wichita, even on this same series. So we could talk about that. We could talk about how we met when I did sales training years ago, and Alyssa was a client of mine. There's so many ways that we have collaborated over the years. And most recently, you went first in the first pilot of a mastermind group that I launched that's called the 10X Inner Circle. We are actually, at the time of filming, coming to the end of our time of that first cohort where we're all looking back at the gains we've had and the challenges we've experienced and the way we've been in our own way, internal obstacles, external obstacles, all the things. And so I want to note that even in your intro, you referenced kind of a broad value proposition, and you've made some pretty significant changes via this mastermind in the last few months. Walk us through a little bit of that.
It's funny, I still go to that value proposition because I don't think it's the changes we've made, although not so drastic that is untrue, but drastic enough that I need to refine and let that new value proposition internalize. And I just default, and I'm just we help companies with data, that's just what I've, back to the sales training, what I've been practicing for years and what I finally nailed. And so now, right when I we kind of nailed it. I'm like, okay, we're changing. We're not leaving the data and analytics space. We are just changing our business model, our approach, and just our specificity in how we serve clients. And really 10X, was the catalyst for that. I had no idea that this was going to happen going into 10X. I had a very modest, impossible goal going into this that really just required me to do more of what I was already doing. And, if you've read Ben Hardy's book and his content, that's exactly opposite of what his idea teaches. But I didn't know. I'd read his stuff, and I still just didn't know how to do it. And I didn't know, what that should look like. And it feels scary to set a goal that you actually feels impossible. You want it to feel attainable, all the things they teach you about goal setting. So that just flipped our business upside down in a lot of really great ways. But also, you're right, the internal barriers were very, very significant. And I have a very high bias to action, and I do a lot of things, but I just don't feel like I've really taken the time to face some of the stories and the narratives that I was telling myself on a very deep level. And, I had been around coaching, I had been around counseling, I had been around, kind of this, I hate to call it self-help, but this space, and I've always been drawn to it. But I just think I'd never gone to the level I've gone through in 10X to really face what's underneath, what's at the root of why I'm not getting to where I want to go. And I can talk about it with smiles now, but there was points during 10X where I was like, oh, I don't like this. There's a reason I haven't really let myself go to these depths before, but I also realized these are barriers that I'm not going to be able to. I have to address these things basically and acknowledge them and be say them out loud. And I feel like that's the only way I'm going to go to new heights. And that really opened my mind up to thinking about how we've changed our business model, which I can go into details on that if you want.
I want to go back before we jump to that to go back to something you said, which I think some of our listeners might find funny. It might sound like it's a juxtaposition. What is a modest 10X goal? Because you said
what my goal was?
Yeah, you said I had a modest 10X goal. What is a modest 10X? Because by definition, if you're familiar with Ben Hardy's training on this idea, the idea of an impossible goal is that you can't imagine how to reach it. Mm-hmm. And so you back up the time and urgency so that you basically create a crisis for yourself on purpose so that you have to think differently. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's a fair summary?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's a modest 10X goal?
Well, I think it wasn't impossible. That's the thing. It was what maybe they call stretch goal. So our goal was to add 20 new clients that had an annual contract value of 6 figures. And so part of the reason I set that goal was because we've had a historical pattern of finding clients that were a right size fit, and we knew these are awesome, but we'd still take clients that were too small and then we'd lose money on. It just up and down it went. So I was like, okay, this will help me to be no, this is the floor. These are the type of clients that we're looking for. This is how we best serve and at this kind of revenue range at these contract sizes. And so that's what I was like, okay, 20, that feels like a lot.
And you weren't completely sure how you would get there, but it felt like a stretch.
I think that's untrue to say that I didn't think I knew how to get there because my actions showed that I just was oh yeah, I just, do more of what I was already doing. That's what I did. It's okay, more outreach.
Get more efficient.
Manage
myself different.
Yeah. Do more LinkedIn stuff, reach out to more people. We refined our offer a little bit. Just those things, tweaks. And I did do a lot more, cold outreach, a lot more DMing, a lot more calls and tapping into Nine Network and things. But I just was halfway, about maybe a third of the way through, I was just okay, I'm just doing more to try to reach this. And what Ben Hardy talks about pathways thinking is it's literally so impossible that you have to sit, you have to maybe sit in that for a while. You have to sit and be what are the pathways that could get me there? And you don't just have an immediate answer to that. And I don't really feel like it required a lot of pathways thinking for me. I don't know. I could see the path, even though it was hard. It was a stretch. I could see the path to that. So there, and then my crisis kind of hit about halfway through.
Right. So 1/3 to halfway through, something happened where you started to feel like the goal you'd set for the 6-month program was not suitable for you anymore. Where did that prompting start to show up? How did you know? And try to remember some of the steps of how did you walk through that with people? What did that look like in the community of the other people?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what the kind of first piece of this puzzle was. But I will say that in retrospect, there was always an inner knowing that it wasn't big enough and that there just wasn't something that was resonating deep in my core, my soul about it. Because even what I told you the other day is like, I was trying to build something that I didn't even want. And I feel like I really would love to be able to remember like the first kind of piece of this, but a lot of it was through coaching as part of the program. And, the group and the accountability and what other people were processing and talking about and thinking about, just kind of, and with the inner knowing kind of led me to just ask the question, like, where's this business going? Like, let's say I achieve this goal. Then what? Am I where I want to be? Or am I close to that? But really, I was just viewing that as like a stair step to like, oh, I need to do this so that I could like do this.
You had an assumption about the order of how things had to happen in a certain progression.
Yeah.
And by default, chose according to those paths.
Yeah. I think that there's something intangible or nothing that I can put my finger on about doing this in a community. Like, I can't necessarily, like, there was tons of great conversations, tons of great connection, but it was the fact of going through this process with others that are going through this process that I feel like was one of the most powerful parts, and just created a space that was safe to like fail. That we came to have a place that was safe to fail and pivot and change and be like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I feel like there was one call where we all want to change our goals.
And it's so funny. I know what call you're talking about. I was leading that call and I had also changed my goal. And so there was this point where I had my own imposter syndrome and I thought, am I allowed to change my goal and say, I have a better goal and you should still trust me as a leader? I had to flip that script in my own mind and say, yes, because we're on this journey of growing. Literally at the end of that first call, I can't remember actually if it was on the call or if it was a Voxer app message later, one of the members said, that meant the world to me that you gave me permission to change. Because some people are more rule followers and they're just going to see it through, even if they have an inner knowing that something needs to change, because they won't give themselves permission to do that. So that was really special to get that feedback because I had insecurities about making my own switches as well.
Yeah, and I think that call was like, that's the one that stands out in my head the most.
Really?
Is when everyone was kind of like, yeah, like I
don't like my goal
anymore.
Like it.
I don't want to do it.
Almost everyone changed their goal.
Yeah. And whether for different reasons.
For different reasons.
Some people's like, I'm optimizing for the wrong thing. Some people's like, this changed and now I want to go this direction.
I'm a different person. I can think bigger.
Yeah. And I think there's something to say about, even though I can kind of identify the inner knowing, when you don't know what to do with something that you kind of just feel, it feels really hard to take action on it. And that's the best way I can explain that is like, oh, I should have known that, or I should have like tapped into that, or I should have recognized that and changed or acted quicker or sooner. But I was like, that inner knowing made no sense to me. It's like every logical thing was like, okay, grow your service business to this point, and then you can do these other things.
Well, especially depending on the peer group you're in, you might already have an enviable services business. You already have something that's doing really well and respectable. So if you're the kind of person that wants to have even greater reach for people and more impact and more wealth that comes with that, it is also, you have to deal with those inner thoughts as well, because it's not as if you're not doing well already.
Right.
So there's something there too.
Yeah. Like just stay the course. Like that, that's kind of what comes with it is like, I think for me, the common story is like, why are you being so crazy? Like, you don't need to like, just do your thing and like play your part and grow this business and like, stop trying to like think outside of the box or stop trying to like, I don't know.
Why do you have to mix it up?
Yeah. Like, why do you have to keep doing that?
So one of the things I would want our listeners to understand, because of how well I know you, is it's not as if you're not introspective and a good learner and a voracious reader and a voracious listener. So you have all these sources of input from influencers and very successful leaders in all kinds of spaces that whom you can mimic and follow, and that you do apply the lessons of what they say. So I want to come back to what you were saying about what happens alongside a group of people, because I think if people haven't done that before, they don't understand that actually everyone has a different goal. And what I think is so fascinating about this first cohort was that we had people who literally had a startup and were using saved money that they had to transfer from savings to pay for this thing, like super risky. But what they felt like they were paying for was time, speed to learning. And then people, others had financial goals that were, 7-figure and all in the same community. So you think, how can that work? So talk more about what the community, what did the relationships of the people create that you couldn't get from the other ways you learned?
Okay, so when I am listening to podcasts or reading or other forms of input, what I do oftentimes is send that to other people because I want to there's a inner, I think it's a human experience to want to feel known, seen, understood, connected. And, I think a lot of times in business and entrepreneurs, that is through ideas and through content and through learning and through change. And there's just something that's totally different if you're listening to a podcast and you're like, cool, oh my God, you get so pumped up. You're like, yes, all these things you're writing. And that's not the same experience as we all listen to a podcast and then, we have a group and we talk about it. And then you're just feeding off of the energy of all these other people. And you're just more inspired and you're more connected. And those are two totally different experiences. And I would choose the one with the group every day. Although I do take in so much input in my daily life, in general. So it's in all honesty, I didn't really pay for the speed. I paid to do it with other people. And I didn't care, or it didn't bother me, or I didn't really notice it that people are in different places. It felt like everyone set, first impossible goal and then other
we set
impossible
modest 10x goals and then morphed, right?
Yeah. And I think I felt connected to everyone, that we were just all going through a similar experience and process, whether that's your first $100,000 or 10 times that amount or something totally different related. For me, it was the human experience of wanting to just feel connected and known in a journey that is really hard and that is really meaningful and impactful. And I think in years to come, point back and be it was this mastermind that changed the course of our business. And to do that by myself is kind of just or even just with, my mom, it's kind of just lackluster to me.
You said a phrase earlier. You said, you described yourself as a person that has a bias to action. And you do listen to a podcast and apply what you can right away. So I think someone might listen and think that's kind of ironic. You're such a go-getter and this bias to action person. You're saying, yes, and I wanted to be with other people that also have a bias to action.
And that's what I paid for. That's what I want. And it's really hard to find. It's really hard to find.
Because why? What is your experience with that?
People just, even if they're amazing people and either if there's connection, there's something that brings people together about striving and something growing and doing something bigger and changing the world and impacting and solving big problems. There's not a lot of people that I know like that I can chat with every other week. It's just not. And that are actually doing the things that are required, hard or easy, to take the next step towards that goal.
Because you talked earlier about internal obstacles and sometimes we're the problem. So my experience is that there'll be a huge bowl of people. If you put them in a bowl, there's a huge bowl of people that actually love to read the same things and listen to the same podcasts. And they'll take some action, but they'll get to a certain point where it makes me think about the map builders in the olden times where they would say, beyond this place are dragons, the end of the world. And they're oh, I'm not going to go there.
Yeah.
Don't touch my thing. Don't go there emotionally. Don't require that of me. I'm not willing to reconcile with that person. I'm not willing to have that hard conversation. I'm not willing to change the nature of my relationship with my mother. Who were it's just too hard. The thing is that it is hard. So why do you keep inviting that if it's hard?
Because the pull of the future is too strong. For me, I'm already just naturally a futuristic thinker, but I'm too scared of the alternative that if I don't, like I won't be able to build and create the life that I want and the person I want to be in the world and how I want to serve in the world. Like I feel like there's a really big calling and a really big desire to like show up in a big way in the world, and if I don't face the hard things or do the hard things consistently, like I'm not going to be able to get there. And so like my pull of the future and like how I imagine that to be, I think about that constantly. Not in a discontentment of the current and the present, but in a way of like that pull is so strong that I will do the hard things consistently. And I just let that pull me. And I think back to your thought about like community is like there's very few people that I know that are willing to like face their inner stuff and do the hard things consistently. And I want to do that with other people. And because there's so few of those people with 10X, I was like, okay, these people have made a significant investment. They want to be in a group that talks about 10X. Like there's a good chance that these could be some of my people. And I would think that's probability. Like I was making a gamble on that. But I'm like, okay, with these factors in place, like I could know that there's a chance that these could be my people. And they're just so few and far between that when those opportunities present themselves, like I'm pretty much willing to invest time, money, vulnerability, all those things for that because, again, the lure and the pull of what I'm trying to build.
That's awesome. I'm glad you did.
Thanks for creating the space for that. I mean, I think you agree with me on a lot of those points, and I know that's why you built this. And you said from the stage, like, I'm building this for myself because you're having a hard time finding these people. And so I know that we are aligned on that, and I know that people listening in some way or another relate to that it's hard. And so you just grasp on and invest for dear life until you can find those people that you're going to walk with, and then you don't let them go.
And we are coming to the end of this particular cohort. And I heard someone one time use this expression. They talked about the anticipated grief, and so it'll wrap up and the regularity of the calls will go away, and that needs to happen. Like this is a chapter, but one of the things that's been so precious that we want to invite people into through this program and other ways of being involved in the Good Humans Growth Network is that when you commit yourself to a group of people, you do create these friendships that also are a level of intimacy because you had a space and a way that you could talk about what that dragon was for you, what that thing was. And I think that's unique. And I think that the risk of how you might be perceived and then the joy when people appreciate it and actually see you as a leader for being that way is the most unexpected pleasure when someone has never experienced that. And we just try to go create that over and over. You create that in your grow groups. We create that through the 10X. We try to create experiences that give many versions of that at our conferences. And it's the goal that we have these business relationships that become true friends and true supports that we build together.
It's beautiful.
So thank you for being a part of that.
Yeah, thank you for creating that.
And that is why you wanted to meet my friend Alyssa McGinn. Thank you, Alyssa, for being our guest. Thank you for joining this podcast. Please subscribe so that you can meet other good humans in the network who share these type of inspiring stories. See you next time.